Now, the Chief Inspector of Probation is warning the government's early release scheme for prisoners could put the public at risk of a serious sexual or violent assault or even murder. Thousands of offenders will be freed early as part of measures that hope to relieve an escalating overcrowding crisis in the UK's prisons. Well, I'm joined now by Eva Hamilton, who started social responsibility programmes on behalf of King Charles before he took the throne. The charity she runs, Key for Life, rehabilitates prisoners using horses. Great to have you on the programme. I'll ask you about your very unique way of helping ex-offenders in a moment. But first of all, what do you think in general of the early release scheme?
Well, thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for inviting me on. I think it's challenging for all parties. There's the prisons themselves. I think it's very challenging from probation, for the victims, for the prisoners. I think it's going to be a tough couple of months ahead, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and you've worked in this area for a very long time. Tell me about what you do and the work that you've carried out.
Yeah, so I set up really off the back of the riots in 2011, a rehabilitation charity, really focusing on young men, 18 to 30-year-olds. So we focus on prolific offenders, mainly people who've got about 7 or more offences. And I created a 7-step model, which is 3 stages in prison, which is all about unlocking their pain. And we bring in business people to be mentoring them, because most of them, over 70%, don't have a father in their lives. And then we also importantly look at employability and helping them get into work. And then when they come out of prison, we're at the gates to collect them, and we help them on that challenging journey for many.
And we're looking at pictures here of horses because they play an important role. Just explain.
Yeah, so the horses are amazing. These are actually our 2 horses. And basically, the horse lives in the present moment. The horse mirrors back to the prisoners or the young men what they're actually carrying, the pain they're carrying. And they are really the game changers. Like when we bring them into prisons, many of the big, pretty egotistical young men, some of them are, when they meet the horses, many of them just burst into tears and their emotions just come out. It's unbelievable.
It is a remarkable scheme that you run. What sort of results are you getting?
So our reoffending rate at the moment is approximately 10%, and that includes recall. And the government's reoffending rate with our men, because they're prolific offenders, is about 60%. And our education, employment and training rate at the moment is just over 60%, and the government's rate is 17% on the guys that we work with.
I mean, that is quite incredible. What do you put that down to?
So I think probably one of the most important parts of what Key for Life does is we help unlock the negative behaviours that so many of these young men are carrying. And that's, to me, probably one of the real game changers about Key for Life. And we also bring in music, football, but the tools we use are about getting these men to take responsibility and accountability. And for many of them, the interesting bit, we do a Dragon's Den style workshop in prison. And many of our young men, they're brilliant business entrepreneurs, albeit they've been selling an illegal product. So for us, it's about showing them that actually they don't have to take the route of crime. They can actually be a socially responsible citizen and get a job like everybody else.
I mean, these methods seem pretty obvious, and yet they're not being used widely. How can we use the methods that you've employed and are clearly working with more people?
Well, I think, you're absolutely right. I think what we found, funny enough, was the 7-step model that I designed. We've now adapted that to address violence in prisons, and we've piloted that in a prison called Fossway in Leicester and Forest Bank in Manchester, and we've had incredible results. So what we're all about doing is training up people in prison to be mentors, They then help the guys that are really troubled. And then what we do is we've now been even training the staff, the officers. And I think what we need to be doing is, whilst these men are in prison, or women, that is where we need to be looking at the rehabilitation. But the most important thing is when they come out of prison, they need to have a job or something, and they need to be prepared for that. So the work we do in the community is actually equally as challenging, if not more, than in prison.
One of the areas of most concern, and we've highlighted it today, is the early release of domestic abuse perpetrators. Have you dealt with them in the line of your work?
Yeah, no, sadly, we have had some domestic abuse perpetrators. And I think it is really difficult for the victims, when people are coming out, if they're properly managed. But, it's very difficult for probation. They're overstretched. We have a lot of our young men on tag at the moment. So they are being monitored, but you can monitor them, to a certain extent. But, for some of these people who are domestic violence victims, they must be extremely concerned and worried about whether they're going to bump into that person, even though they're not allowed near them. So I think it's a big worry.
Yeah, well, as we continue to grapple with this issue, it's been really interesting getting your thoughts. Eva Hamilton, founder and CEO of Key for Life, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.